Hi there. We are finally at the conclusion of the Tata Steel tournament in Vikenze, and it was an exciting tournament. Um, and I would like to share with you a final round game between GM Richard Rapport and GM Baskaran Adhiban, who was one of the new invitees in the top class of this year's tournament. And I believe that he'll be around for a while. I was impressed with his play this tournament. He's a fighting chess player and showed that he belonged. So Rapport started off with d4. Adiban played knight f6 and bishop g5, another Trompovsky. And this is the second Trompovsky of the day. We saw Ian Nepomniachtchi get demolished by Wesley So in under 30 moves with the same opening. So Adhiban plays c5, one of several responses. In the Wesley So game, Wesley played d5, which is also a solid response. One of the early responses that one would see often was knight e4, challenging the bishop without giving the bishop an option of capturing the knight. And then you would see moves like bishop f4, for example. Sometimes you saw bishop h4. You even would see lines like this. But this response in the center is good also. Now, moving forward, this move c5 can lead to Benoni type positions after the move d5 here. And it can also lead to Sicilian type positions, which is what we're about to see. So after knight c3, notice that the c pawn is held back here. After knight c3, we go into positions that's reminiscent of the e4 pawn games. So now c takes d4, queen takes d4, giving up tempo with knight c6. And now the position uh, favors a Sicilian. Now the question has to be asked, is this a good Sicilian? A good variation of the Sicilian for black? Is it good for white? Or is it a bad Sicilian for black or bad for white? Now, there's a variation in the Sicilian, actually, I'll just share it with you real quick, where where white brings his queen out early. And I believe it's called the check hour variation. Whereas normally you see this, of course. There's this idea here to bring the queen out here, and of course, if knight c6, you get this idea where white tries to establish his queen in the middle early. Of course, before the knight comes out, often you might see a little preparation first with a6, and then say after bishop c4, knight c6. So back to the game, we can see the transpositional possibilities there. So now we're in some type of Sicilian, and we normally don't see the queen on h4 like that in the Sicilian. So if I'm playing black here, I'm trying to maneuver white into a harmless variation or even an inferior variation of the said Sicilian. And queen h4 doesn't look too good to me. Normal, right? Trying to get in normal lines would probably maybe be even queen d2. But then, of course, um, you would be in a normal, you could go on to maybe a knight off type position, play e6, d6, what have you, and go into normal looking lines. Okay, So Rapport played queen h4. There's e6. It's possible for this bishop to come here. Castle's queen side. Bishop e7. e4. a6. Right, with the idea similar in the knight off, right, to play b5 with aggressive queenside expansion. And now let's take stock. It's my opinion that white is in a slightly inferior variation of the Sicilian after this move knight f3. And the reason why I think so is because in normal lines of the Sicilian, this knight is here, has captured on d4, leaving the way for this f pawn to advance, because it's very important to have the f pawn available for advancing the Sicilian, because you have lost the d pawn, and black has a pawn preponderance in the center, so you need this pawn to help fight for the central squares. It's not only about storming the king side, but you also need this pawn to help enforce the move e5 or f5 at some point to undermine this d5 square. And of course, the other idea with f5 is to connect g4, g5 with the kingside pawn storm. So with the knight on f3, it's kind of like a hindrance in that aspect. The queen also seems a bit misplaced, and the queen, after, for instance, this bishop moves, whether it trades itself for the knight or moves to e3, the queen seems misplaced in that it will be tactically vulnerable, all right, after a sudden knight move. So these moves, this knight f3 and this queen h4 seem to relegate white to a substandard Sicilian variation. I want to go back one more time to show you the difference. So let's look at just some random Sicilian variation. Okay. Okay. Let's just say we'll do this. 4, bishop e7, queen f3, and yeah, let's just castle here and castle. Now, notice the difference. You see, we have this knight here, right? And if the knight is attacked, it either trades itself for this knight or the knight ends up here. Okay? But notice how f4 has been played. And these pawns can freely be advanced. Notice the queen, right, is assisting and pushing on the king side. And after e5, for instance, this move queen f3 being on this diagonal helps slow black down a little bit in his queen side expansion. In that after b5 he can play a move like e5, attacking the knight and rook at the same time. So I just wanted to show you that so you can see the contrast, how this setup is better than what Richard Rapport has right now on the board. And if you look at the black side, Adhiban has basically all the benefits of the Sicilian. He has basically the same black position, but white's position is slightly worse. So we can say that Adhiban has won the opening battle. Let's go back. Okay, thank you for your patience there. So notice the queen is now kind of in the way, right? This move is played without the knight having gone there, because the queen has gone there using a tempo to capture on d4, then being hit by the knight, so that's free development, and now going to a square where it's not really that effective. And now the knight is here, blocking an important piece in normal Sicilian lines. Therefore, white's game, is, like I said, a little bit substandard for your normal Sicilian setups. Now, I'm not saying he's lost, but black is definitely equalized. So queen c7, bishop d3, d6, keeping an eye on the e5 square. And you can see f4 is very important. See, there's no threat of f5, no threat of e5 or anything. Black is totally comfortable. Rook he1. So therefore, white's only real chance is to try to just play straight in the center. But the problem with playing in the center is black has a beautiful pawn preponderance in the center. It's very hard for white to operate because black has control of all of these squares. And that's one of the brilliant things about the Sicilian is that central pawn preponderance makes it very difficult for white to utilize the center in his operations. And that's why I usually will try to undermine the center, black center somehow with f4, and then attack on the king side. So bishop d7, and Adhiban's just biding his time. He doesn't castle over here because the queen, bishop, and knight are over there. Okay, and all of that. In other words, if he castled kingside, this black, he would be giving some type of acknowledgement and credence to white's plan. He's helping white out by doing that. See, because what happened is white's pieces are misplaced on the king side, and Adhiban realized that. In other words, Rapport tipped his hand too early and said, "Hey, I'm going to go attack on the king side before you get there. I'll be waiting." And Adhiban said, "Okay, I'm not going to show up." So basically, he knows, okay, where the pieces are on the king side, so he's not going to put his king over there. Simple as that. So here we go with the push in the center, and this is again, not really a sound sacrifice. Black has the center locked up. He has too much pressure on the center, but Rapport is playing for activity, and he sacrifices the pawn to have access to e4 for his knight. Okay, so he does that, and he wants to put some pressure again on the king side. And again, it will be foolhardy to castle because he would just lose right away after, after just blundering like that. Of course, he wouldn't do something elementary like that. But I just wanted to show you that so you can see the force that white is employing on the king side. He's ready to jump, at that opportunity. Okay, so after knight e4, let's trade some pieces. Again, playing in the center. That's black's advantage is right there. He's playing in the center. He said, "Hey, let's get rid of some of these pieces." Again, the suspect nature of the queen's position is manifested in that this bishop can't avoid the trade because the queen would be exposed. And with the removal of this dark square bishop, these outposts start looking really good for black's knights. So there goes the bishop. And now that square has to be guarded by a pawn. Okay? This pawn will have to go here to stop black from getting that square. Knight drops back. And now there's an attack against this pawn right here. And Adhiban simply plays f6. Notice again, he's not castling king side rather. Knight h5. And so he's Rapport is going to get the pawn back. But watch what Adhiban does. He just completes his development. On the other side of the board, notice that white has no pieces on the queen side. Right? He has many pieces over here. Bishop is pointing over there. So those pieces are kind of unemployed or misplaced rather. So knight takes g7. Knight g6. Hitting the queen. right? That was misplaced. I said it was misplaced from the get-go. Should have probably dropped back to queen d2 to d2. If bishop takes, then you're just opening the h file for this rook, so you don't want to do that. So you got to lose some time. Got to move the queen. So he offers a queen trade. Okay, so he's figuring, hey, I'll just go into this end game, but um, black is just too strong in the center. Center is the most important part of the board. These pawns are going to be killer. Adhiban takes f4, as I mentioned earlier, with the absence of the dark square bishop. These squares become more sensitive to white, so he drops in with the threat against this pawn on g2 and the bishop on d3. Queen trade, knight takes, and now Rapport also has to worry about this pawn on g2 and this knight here on g7. So g4, this move is suspect because of the weakening aspects, and of course, how are you going to get this knight out of f4 now that you did that? But the purpose is clear. He's trying to demobilize the pawns. I always say if you can demobilize the pawns, or fix them rather, you can then attack them. However, he creates a tremendous weakness in his own camp by doing that. I mean, this knight is like a permanent fixture here, and this pawn is a weakness in itself. Okay, this pawn can be attacked also. So immediately, Adhiban exploits the weakness left behind, the diagonal. I mean, immediately, not 2 or 3 moves from now. Just say, oh, you did that. Okay, bishop e4, knight g2. Okay, and now gaining some time for Adhiban. And then we go through this little game again, attacking the rook. And Rapport is saying, hey man, you want to draw? Adhiban says nope. And the knight goes back to this outpost. And this is killer. And that's what I was saying before with the dark square bishop disappearing. And then he went and played g4, which is super anti-positional. Okay, he just trades the bishop. And the rook, the rook is captured. So if he play rook e1, then you kind of get this same kind of situation. Bishop takes e4, rook takes e4, rook g8 attacking this guy. Knight would go back, takes, and rook g2. And then say after king e2, black is just cruising along. Right, black is just cruising along, easy. Not easy, but for these guys, this would be an easy win for black. As they would say, it's just a matter of technique. Knight is super powerful. Pawn preponderance in the center. Rook on the back rank. Weak pawns for white. It's too much to try to overcome. So instead, Rapport went to give black some double pawns, but gave up the exchange in the process. So this was his idea. Grab another pawn in exchange for the exchange. Okay, so in exchange for the exchange, Rapport has 6 pawns to 5 from for Adhiban, but he doesn't have enough compensation. I mean, these 2 knights, aren't gonna do any good. So immediately, he's gonna recover his material back. Okay, this saves this pawn temporarily. Okay, Again, play in the center. Look how much these pawns cover. It's like a wall. Okay. Nice move by uh, Adhiban. Just forcing, basically just forcing the issue. Excuse me. It's just the same old story, driving the opponent's pieces into passivity. And Rapport resigned. It's move 41, so they made the time control, and then he saw that there was no more to fight for afterward. Okay, so good solid game by Adhiban and good tournament in general, and I'm looking forward to seeing this guy down the road. And rest in peace to the Trompovsky opening at the top level. Uh, I mean, it was. No, I'm just kidding about that. I mean, you'll see it every now and then, but again, it is definitely more of a like an offbeat surprise weapon. But today, 0-2 for the white side of the Trompovsky. So as usual, like and subscribe and comment, and I'll see you on the next video.